Okay, I've discovered this amazing modification for Rubik's brand 3x3, and it makes it turn very great, very smooth. It still cuts corners very great, and so far just because of this mod, it turns better than the cube has when it has been lubricated. Now, after doing this mod, I have not lubricated it yet, and it still turns better than when it was lubricated earlier. So obviously, this is a very good mod to making your cube much smoother and much better. As for the materials for this mod, obviously you're going to need a 3x3 that needs modding. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Rubik's 3x3, but I can't guarantee they'll work on other cubes. You'll need very fine sandpaper. I use 220 grit. This works very, very well for this modification. And also you'll be needing some, type of cloth to wipe it down. I just use a sock, it works perfectly. The first thing you must do in this modification is disassemble your cube. And you obviously probably know how to do that, but if you don't, just turn a layer 45 degrees, pop it open. If you can't do that with your finger, just use a screwdriver or any other tool or metal object. And just take apart. Once you've done that, separate the pieces. You got the core. Now separate the corners and the edges from one another, because we'll be doing separate things to each of those types of pieces. And I'll just be putting the edges. Okay. The first thing that we will be focusing on are the edges. Now, for the edges, take your sandpaper. What we will be sanding down are this little bit here. And what you'll do is just, take the sandpaper, make that bit, much smoother. And what that will do is it'll have less friction between this and the inside of each centerpiece. I'm not going to be doing a ton, but just for demonstration, I can do it because I've already done it multiple times. My edges are very finely sanded down. And I fear that if I sand it down more, the puzzle might become too loose. And secondly, what you have to do is just kind of, round it down by doing that. I'm not completely sure if it's necessary, but I just like doing it. Just, for satisfaction. The second mod would be do the corner pieces. We'll be doing something similar. You'll be taking the sandpaper and rounding this down. And that improves the corner cutting, I'm pretty sure. You just round that down pretty well. And then take your sandpaper and go over these edges so they're nice and round. And especially pay attention to this little corner on the corner stock. Just round that down nice and neatly. Like that. Now that you're done with that, take the cube and reassemble it. Except for one layer. So just assemble the first 2 layers of the cube. Now that you have assembled the first 2 layers, we can move on to the second bit of the modification. Now what you're going to be doing is, see this whole layer here where the pieces rub against? I'm going to be taking the very fine sandpaper and sanding it down just like this. Now, I've already done it. Obviously, it's going to take more time for you to sand it. And you'll know you've sanded it pretty well if you kind of get this dark gray discoloration, and you can see kind of the polished piece, compared to it. This sanded bit is much lighter than the polished piece. Now, after you've done that, take your piece of cloth, and just kind of rub all the plastic dust away. Because if that gets into your cube, that's not going to be very fun. So, after you've done that, just reassemble the cube. Okay, you've reassembled your cube. Now feel how this rotates. Obviously, it's much smoother. But if it's not smooth enough to what you wanted it to be, or it still has too much resistance for you, just take it apart again and do the same thing. And then reassemble it and turn it. Once you've gotten, enough sanded down, go to the next side. We're just on the green side, we'll do the blue side. And really, you just sand down the sides. Like you did last time. And just do that to every single side. Remember to wipe down the plastic dust. And essentially, once you've done all 6 sides, just reassemble the whole cube and it should be so much better. So after you've done all these modifications to your 3x3, you can lubricate it, which I have not done since doing this mod. Okay, I just got done lubricating with Vaseline. I worked in some of the lubrication, and I have to say, I'm impressed. This made my cube so much smoother, it cuts corners amazingly. It's an amazing cube. I've never seen a cube like it. I mean, it can compare to some pretty decent speed cubes out there. And it's just made out of, a Rubik's brand. Obviously, it's no high-end memory or an A5, because, those are just the cream of the crop when it comes to cubes. But still, just coming out of a normal store-bought Rubik's 3x3 cube, I've got to say, it's really, really nice. I can move it very fast. I can do some really good finger tricks. It's a really great cube. So, I highly recommend doing this mod if you want more out of your Rubik's 3x3. Of course, if you really want to get into speed cubing, you might want to buy a speed cube. But still, this is just a really good mod to make a pretty decent cube into an amazing one. So, alright, that kind of sums it up. Have fun with this mod, and have fun cubing.